Hello, it's Classy here, back with another Tribes video, and today, although a bit late, I will be showcasing a 6-star UR time travel Boruto, who was the featured unit from the last banner, and a lot of people just don't have this unit because the last banner was kind of a disappointment, so they just decided to skip, including me. So shout out to Purple from Server 16, my alliance mate, for sharing these clips. And the first things first, we're going to take a look at his art. And I think that this is pretty cool art, actually, especially when it's animated. I would prefer that the Berserk Naruto is also not in the picture itself in the art, but besides that, I really like the colors, especially from the Rasengan. Now, after that, we're going to take a look at his stats. So his total power right now is 70,000, which is a good amount, and level 83 in tier 16 at 6 stars. This is a URD unit, and from the actual stat numbers, you can tell that his defensive stats are really high, like the guard rate, the damage reduction rate. Some of the offensive stats are pretty decent as well, like the damage increase rate, critical rate, and guard damage reduction rate. So overall, a lot of good defense on this unit, and some decent offense as well. A little lacking in the guard suppression rate, so he'll struggle a little bit more against enemy units that have guard rate. But besides that, it's pretty decent stats for a tank. And we'll see later on in the battle that his damage is actually pretty good. For his links, we have Kid Naruto and Jiraiya, because they were part of that same time travel arc with him when they were fighting Urashiki, Papa Sasuke and Sarada. Similar situation. Papa Sasuke made an appearance, and Sarada's just his friend. And Neji and Hinata, it's an interesting choice, but they're kind of like some of his relatives. Now we're going on to the skills. For Rasengan, we're going to do single target damage to one enemy with a 100% chance to confuse them. So they'll move randomly for 2 turns, and it will mess up the opponent's rotations if they have different cells available. And he also boosts all allies' guard rate by 37%, and all allies' stats effect suppression rate by 6%. So this is actually a pretty good jutsu. Just take away the rest of the unit, just look at this jutsu on its own. I like the confuse, because in PvP modes, that really does wonders against the enemy team's rotation. Like, it's really hard for them to fix their own rotations, especially since PvP is so luck-based, which is why a lot of the confusers are pretty good. And the guard rate boost for all allies by 37% is really high. And the status effect suppression rate boost is actually a nice touch, because a lot of people are using status effects right now. And characters like Boruto, Hidan are actually really good anti-meta choices. So that's also a really good buff. And it affects all allies as well. So looking good. Now for a skill 2, does skill 2 damage and boosts all allies guard rate by 24% for the rest of the battle. So this is actually a really good skill 2. It's a permanent buff, and it's actually a pretty high number. So you'll be seeing your units guard more often. Now for skill 4, he'll boost all active allies damage reduction rate by 25% when he's active at the start of the turn. All active allies guard rate by 17% if he's active at the start of the turn. All active allies damage reduction rate by 17% more if he's going last. So the first 2 basically is pretty generic effects for a tank unit. Basically, when he's rotating in, the 2 allies alongside him and himself will just get these defensive boosts. So that's pretty good. But if the cell is going last, which means it's slower than the opponent's cell, that means he'll give an additional 17% damage reduction rate boost. So in total, you could get up to 40 to 50% damage reduction rate and like 17 to 20% guard rate, which is actually really good defense, and it will be really hard to kill that cell, whoever's in there at the time. So that's not very bad, and it's not necessarily the best fourth skill for a tank either. But I will say that for players that are struggling in arena because they're slower, this is actually a really good effect because it helps you offset some of those disadvantages from the speed boosts that your opponents have. And also, like, Tigara is another example of this, where you can try to out-tank your opponents going first, and it's just a pretty decent strategy. So that's what I'm going to show right now because Purple has selected some opponents that are faster than him, and we can still win with some help from Boruto. So that's where he really shines. And similar for his limit break, which we'll get into soon. But for now, let's take a look at the vitality. It's basically the Sage Mode Jiraiya vitality, where he gains chakra when allies and enemies are defeated. So it's pretty good. Tanks can have a even worse vitality, in my opinion, where it's the one where they take damage and they get chakra, because that's very inconsistent. So this one's not very bad at all, especially in PvP. And also, it's just offset by chakra generators like Sai, as always. For his limit break 2, we have boost all active allies, guard damage reduction rate if going last. So it just stacks on top of the fourth skill already, where only the active allies are affected, but it boosts guard damage reduction rate, which is pretty rare. And basically what this does is when you guard and the blue shield comes up, the amount of damage you reduce will be going up. Alright, so we're here with the arena battle, and let's see what happens. So we can see that Boruto's fourth skill already triggers, even though he's not in the active rotation right now. That's because of that specific text in his fourth skill that says boosts all active allies damage reduction rate if going last. So there are 2 damage reduction rate boosts, and this is the second part, if you remember looking at the fourth skill with me a few minutes ago. But basically it's like a 17% boost for any cell that is going last. And that's pretty cool because in this case, where all of my cells are slower than the opponent's cells, each cell will get a damage reduction rate boost, which will help them tank some of the damage, and that can offset some of the speed advantage. But in this case, Kakashi has Lightning Blade, which is insta-jutsu, and it's really hard to tank that. So yeah, my Kakashi goes down. And now Boruto is in rotation, so he does 2 damage reduction rate boosts because this cell is going last, and he's in active rotation, and he also does a guard rate boost. So lots of defense for this cell, which is important because we have Sai here. So yeah, we should be able to tank this very well. Yep, Boruto's taking no damage. Perfect. Now on our side, we're probably not going to do too much damage, but we do have Boruto's jutsu, which is Confuse. So that will mess up their rotation, and it won't kill the person he's attacking because they have a bunch of tanks on their side right now. So there we go, Boruto using his jutsu, pretty cool animation. Rasengan does good damage actually to a tank, and I should have scrolled back a little bit. Forgot to show this, but it also gives guard rate up to everyone here. It also does status effect suppression up, as you saw, and Boruto even took some counter damage from Kid Naruto, who is a tank. So just a cool interaction. So now you can see Kid Naruto is actually over there, and that messes up the rotation. We also got a stun, which messes up the rotation even more. So this gives us an advantage, even though we're slower in speed. You saw Boruto's fourth skill trigger again at the beginning of this turn. So we get more damage reduction rate, and as you can see, we survived those hits, and now we're doing more damage to them. So that's not the best target. I would have rather taken out one of the T units, or both of them, but that's fine. Boruto's fourth skill triggers again at the beginning of this turn. Yep, nice tanking. Okay, so Boruto rotates in at the beginning of the turn again. Damage reduction rate, guard rate. We don't have the limit break, so we don't have guard damage reduction rate. But we're still slower, and this time or co-oping, but they're going to use Sublime, who usually does good damage. So he does a lot to tease, especially. So I'm not sure if Sai can survive this, even with all the defense, because Sai is pretty squishy. Okay, nice. Sai is able to survive with like 30% HP. We have Sage Jiraiya again. Also, Boruto has been getting chakra from his vitality ever since Kakashi died during the first turn, so that's also very useful and important. Here we go. Rasengan. Guard rate up. Status effect suppression rate up. Pretty decent damage for a D unit on an A unit. I definitely think this Boruto could deal more damage, especially since it's a 6-star. But that's kind of not the whole point of this unit. Now we're going last again, so we keep getting damage reduction rate boosts. Okay, that's good. My units are able to survive, but we got a stun in the middle, which is very bad. And we stunned them also, which is nice. Okay, now they have a co-op with Santa and Sublime. So that's very bad because we have 2 T units and an A unit right now. So this cell is probably going to die even if Boruto helps a little bit with the damage reduction. So yeah. There we go. So that's not good for my cell, but we still have the whole energy cell intact right now. And we have not went first at all this entire game. Boruto comes in again, damage reduction rate, guard rate. Okay, Sai dies. And Boruto still tanks that. He's been tanking a good amount of stuff recently. Sage Jiraiya. Guard rate, status effect, suppression rate, and a confuse. Yeah, the confuse won't matter as much now because the enemy doesn't have that many units left. Alright. We're nearing the end of this battle, but basically we were like pretty far behind in speed and we lost the early unit, but with some help from Boruto boosting every single cell, every single turn, and also just like a pretty good team setup with good stats effects, we were able to pull through with a pretty strong victory. I think this should be the end for them. And Boruto jutsu one more time so we can see how much damage he does, but that's not like the whole point of his character. It's more about the defense. But still, a pretty good showing. I hope this demonstrates the usefulness of Boruto. Sure, his banner was pretty trash, but that does not mean that he himself is trash. He and Tigara could make a pretty strong combo for dealing with whales, for dealing with people who are just super fast in arena. And yeah, so having characters like that, having status effects, having some tanks, maybe even some healers like Blossom. So those are some quick tips for how to deal with those types of opponents. So hope you guys enjoyed this showcase and learned something. Definitely an interesting unit and one that I'm glad I'm covering. And I got lots more on the way. Thanks.